Hey, it's Kirby Myers, and you're listening to Behind the Blonde. This is a podcast for anyone who's ever been in the opposite place of where they want to be. Last week's episode, the orgasm expectation, your pleasure is not optional, pivoted a bit from addiction. We talked about how only 15 to 20% of women actually climax from penetration. But the whole idea is whatever it is, if it's addiction, if it's mental health, if it's sexuality, if it's something that you feel like you can improve upon, or maybe you're not exactly where you want to be, we can get there. And so I'm really excited about today's guest, my first guest besides my husband, somebody that I love so dearly, somebody that's become a really good friend, and somebody that's been extremely pivotal in my wellness journey, but also just really becoming more free. And that's what this podcast is about. She's the founder and owner of Evolve Key West and Full Circle Yoga School. Jolie Wilson, welcome. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Thank you so much. I'm so great. And I'm so happy to be here today. And I just want to thank you for doing this because every single episode you release is so healing and so needed. And you share so vulnerably in the way that people really need to relate and connect to. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you for wearing a closet find, of course.
Yes, of course. I had to.
I record this inside my boutique, Kirby's Closet here in Key West, and she's wearing one of my dresses. So much appreciation and a little shout out. But, you know, you say that about me, and I appreciate that because you're somebody for me that has made leaps and bounds in my journey of really getting to the place that I want to be. Because, yes, I might be 5 years alcohol and nicotine free come April, but I found myself a few years in, still in a lot of pain, still in a lot of anxiety, still wondering why I couldn't really find full freedom. And we talk about this a lot. I don't know if you ever find full freedom, but there are lots of little ways and daily practices. So I have been a student of Jolie's in yoga for the last 2 years. And I found that power yoga, I said, saved me about 6 months after I quit drinking. I was doing it online, like 5 or 6 days a week at home, but it really was about changing my body because for the first 6 months after I quit alcohol, I was still treating my body like a dump site. I wasn't drinking, but I was eating like crap. I wasn't working out. I actually gained like 20 pounds after I quit drinking, which people think like, oh, you just lose weight. No, I went the opposite. But it wasn't until I met you that the yoga became the mental, it became a cleansing, and it became life-changing. So we're really going to get into the power of breath today and little ways that you can help your mental state. If you live inside of your head, okay? Because I have lived inside of my head my entire life, overthinker, every small detail can drive me up a wall. And I finally found that freedom, and you've been the person that has helped me get there. And it's a daily practice.
For sure.
But last week I talked about Jaguar energy, and I love that you wore this because
I listened to your podcast and I started feeling it. So.
the first time I ever said Jaguar energy was in one of your yoga classes. You give off this aura of you're completely in your feminine. You're completely free. You allow yourself the ability to be in your body, to fully express who you are. And when you're in one of your classes, which I've now taken into my daily life, you have given me the freedom to fully breathe, to have these animalistic movements when I feel that way.
I think that's something that asks a lot of courage. I feel that as women, we are taught, not even from a place of meaning to shame us or any of these things, but we're taught to be polite, cross your legs, don't be too loud. I think it's a decision of who you want to be, what type of woman you want to step into. And then it does ask courage. I really think it's so simple, right? I mean, I often say it's not necessarily easy, but it is simple. And it does start with what you're embodying within. Like, what are you carrying with you in your mind? And most of us have, they say, like 40 to 60,000 thoughts a day. And for the person who is not practicing some sort of mindfulness, it doesn't have to be yoga or some specific kind of meditation, but for people who are not doing anything, not watching the mind and the emotions and the thoughts, over 80% of their daily thoughts are negative. It's a stress, fear, all these things. So It always starts with the breath.
You talk about fight or flight a lot. I remember when I was first coming to your classes, you would have these little cues, or there's this moment where sometimes we would go to the side of the mat and you would say, bow to, Mother Earth, or, thank her. And I would kind of chuckle in my head. And now 2 years later, Britt and I were in Georgia doing a hike, and I was like leaning against a tree, thanking the tree. And, it's just, again, like we talk about time and daily choices and daily little shifts that change you. And even though sometimes these things at the beginning can seem like woo woo would be the word,
Sure.
when you start practicing them, when you start really looking inward, when you start taking a moment, and it seems impossible. I'm somebody who I think for so long the drinking was obviously masking things. The marijuana, you and I have talked a lot about, that was definitely numbing things. But at first, my reason was to turn my mind off because I'm so hyperactive. So being able to breathe properly has allowed me to release all of these things that I was using, and using the most simplistic thing that we all have and we all do every day, which is breathe. But most of us are actually doing it incorrectly, because when
Yes.
we're born, we're not. We're doing it correctly, and we're
Right.
conditioned over time.
Yes, exactly. It happened to me with my oldest son. When he was born, he did have some lung issues and had to be in the intensive care for a few days. And when I brought him home from the hospital and laid him down on the bed, his belly was like rounding out to breathe. And at that time, this was 21 years ago, I thought, oh my gosh, he's struggling to breathe. But I wasn't a breathwork teacher then. I was practicing yoga, but I didn't yet know the power of the breath. So, in fact, when we're born, we breathe from the belly
Mm.
typically, if there's not too much birth trauma. And at some point, childhood, typically, we start to forget, to the point I was stretching my 16-year-old's hamstrings for
And she has
soccer.
4 boys, by the
Yeah,
way.
4
Okay.
boys,
So we're talking about
16 to
Jaguar energy.
21.
Okay.
But I was stretching him just a few weeks ago, and I said, and I noticed he wasn't breathing
Mhm.
correctly. And so I said, let your belly round out and breathe. And he literally said, that feels weird.
Mhm.
And then I shared with him, this is the right way to breathe. So most people are not breathing correctly. And that's something else that I love to share. I try not to be too redundant in classes, but every time I meet a new person, I just want to share the power of the breath, because most people are breathing 16 to 20 breaths per minute, and it's all up in the chest. And what that's doing is it's constantly releasing adrenaline, constantly releasing cortisol. It damages your brain, your immune system, every function of your body suffers. And then you're staying in this fight or flight anxiety state. And then, of course, the depression filters into that. And I tell people, if you just start to breathe from the belly and slow your breath down, if you just make that a practice,
Mhm.
you will naturally integrate trauma, because trauma is not integrated in therapy. And I'm a big proponent of talk therapy. It's amazing. But what is being talked about these days is that you integrate trauma through the body. And the most powerful way to do that is the breath. And we're breathing like 200,000 breaths a day. Of course, some are breathing, quicker or slower, but that's a lot of breath. So if we just do that, everything starts to change. Like life becomes literally magic through that
It
practice.
feels manageable. I have for so long lived in that fight or flight.
Yeah.
I've lived in that anxiety. I've lived in that overactive brain.
Mhm.
And I think the biggest blessing for me in meeting you and learning this is I'm able to pass it on to my children. I mean, just you talked about your son just last night. My son, who's 10, at a soccer game, he missed a goal that he, in his mind, should have gotten. And he held it together all game, and he walked off the field, and he got in the car, and he was hysterical. He was sobbing. And you can't take the pain away. And as a mother, all you want to do is take his pain away. But I could get him to calm down. I could regulate his nervous system. And all of us say, breathe, breathe, baby, breathe. But actually having the tools to teach him to really breathe. Remember how we talked about it? Deep, and hold it, and out. And we go through that together. And within literally 60 seconds, he was calm and he was in that state. And I remind them, especially as kids, because I know this as an adult, most of the time for us, we find ourselves alone in these situations. Well, our children, sometimes they're at school, or they're at practice, or they're at a friend's house, or they're in a place that feels very scary when they might have this feeling, or this, I'm about to have an anxiety attack. And so if they as children, I know a lot of moms out there can pass this on to their kids at a young age. I wish I had this tool
Me
when I
too.
was little.
Yeah.
So when did you discover that the breath changed everything for you?
I mean, it's been some years now, but maybe not as long as someone would think. Part of the yogic practice, and I have been practicing yoga since the year 2000, so over 25 years now, is breathing. But still, it took me a long time to really understand the full effects. And I think it's really when I got into the transformational breathwork
Mhm.
space where we do specific breath patterns, like in a laying down workshop kind of space. And it does take you to alternate states of reality.
Mhm.
I mean, people travel to the jungle to do plant medicine
Mhm.
ceremonies with shamans, but you can actually do it with your breath without ingesting anything and have those same experiences. So I think age, experience, wisdom, and just like, hey, I really want to live as a person who is embodied and someone who's actually living peace, not just searching and grasping and trying to attain peace. And it just was through time and experience that I was like, wow, this is it. I mean, we need to move the body,
Yeah.
but breath
Mhm.
is truly the foundation.
So for somebody listening right now
Mhm.
at home, and maybe they're saying, yoga's not for me. That's just going, well, okay, so what can I do in my day to day? What's the little piece of advice if you want to give a 15 or 20 second so they
Yeah,
can say, okay, now I know how to breathe properly if I find myself in this fight or flight scenario?
right. I love that. Thank you. So I always encourage sitting up or laying down. So if you are sitting up, nice, tall, long spine, I invite people to place their hand on their bellies and even close the eyes, tune inward. And then just slowly, it can be a count of 4, it can be a count of 6, it can be a count of 8. Slowly inhale for those seconds. Maybe pause for a moment at the top of the inhale, then slowly let the breath out, pause at the bottom. And if you do that, just that for even 3 minutes, well, I'd like to say 1 minute will have a powerful effect. But if you do that for 3 minutes, if you have 5 minutes, I teach over 25 different breathwork techniques. And ultimately, people are always like, tell me what to do, tell me how to meditate. And I'm like, well, I can offer you practices, but ultimately, it's up to each of us to discover
Mhm.
what breath type of practice works the best. But it can be simple. It can literally just be long, slow, deep breaths. I do recommend through the nose
Mhm.
and slow exhales out, and that is enough. But the problem is we hear those words like just breathe, like
Mhm.
breathe, baby.
Right.
Like I am breathing. I'm always
Yes,
breathing.
exactly.
But if we don't know that it needs to
Consciously
come from the
breathing.
belly
Yes.
and to just be in that space of breath and focusing on the calm coming over us, then we miss it.
It wasn't until you that these little cues or these things that I allowed myself or gave myself permission to do. So the rounding, just in the last couple of months, she's been saying, like, let your belly get really full. And again, as women,
We're not good at it.
we're used to sucking in.
Yeah.
Oh my
All the
God, we don't
time.
want to push it out.
Yeah.
What? No way. Even if we're in a yoga class and nobody's looking, I'm not going to push
We
my
already
belly
judge
out.
ourselves enough, and then you want me to let my
Push it
belly
out and
hang
feel
out.
that.
Right.
Oh, it's changed everything for
Yeah.
me. And my favorite, so I know you said there's a million different ways, but I normally do this if I'm alone, but I will do
Mhm.
this in class, is the really, really big breath until you can't breathe in
Yeah.
anymore. You take a few more sips, hold it, and then literally like blow it out as hard as you can. I'm not going to do it right
Yeah,
now
I
because
know,
I'd
like,
pop your eardrum.
I tried to go away from the microphone.
But it feels so, so good. So, something else you talked about, and I've always found interesting as well, because I've
Mhm,
learned a lot from you, is you mentioned trauma. And
mhm.
obviously, there is very, very deep types of
Yes,
trauma.
yes.
But you've opened my eyes to the fact that trauma release can actually incorporate, like, I obviously knew childbirth is trauma. It's not
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
sense that we think it is, but you've talked about how there's so many different types of trauma and we
Mhm.
don't even realize it.
Well, trauma is change and,
Trauma is change.
so getting your dream job, moving to your dream location, meeting the love of your life, these are actually traumas in your life. So we're experiencing trauma all day long. So we do sometimes say little t, big T. So like little t might be oh, you almost got in a fender bender and had to slam on the brakes, and then you were just really anxious for the next half hour. Or maybe you got in a really bad car accident like
Mhm.
you experienced and shared on your podcast at a younger age with the alcohol related incident. And that's a big T,
Mhm.
trauma. So there are different levels of trauma, but basically we're experiencing trauma on a daily basis. And look at where we are in this world right now. There's a lot
Yeah.
happening, right? A lot of awakening is happening, and there's just a lot of people that are angry, and we're feeling that. And so that is trauma. Just going through COVID was trauma for the entire planet. And so it's really something that we need to look into and address. And breath is still the best, first, most wonderful tool that we have to stay in a place of peace and allow that to integrate. Integration is the word, because it actually gets stored in your muscles.
Mhm.
It, like, literally is held in the body, and so when you do this deep belly breathing type of breath work, it literally moves it out of your cells, out of your muscles, and out of your
You
actual
can feel
body.
it shaking. One of the interesting things last week we talked about sex.
Mhm.
My husband, who came on 2 episodes ago, I finally got him to start doing power yoga with Jolie.
Yeah.
So, you wanna talk about thinking something's woo-woo and being just a total skeptic, and I actually did a quantum healing hypnosis session with her, a little over a year ago. That will be a whole other
Yes.
episode. He did see immediate benefits from that, but he was still kind of like, he had never met you. And he's kind of like, who is
Sure.
this
Yeah.
person? Like, what's happening? And I see she's becoming more peaceful, but she's kind of saying some weird things sometimes, or not weird things, but
Yeah.
things that
Well,
I
the things that come
maybe,
with stigma and,
sure.
oh, tree hugger stuff. I
Right.
get it. I
Yes.
get it.
And then he was the one taking the picture of me hugging the tree a couple weeks ago,
Literally.
literally. So, and like, I'm going to send this to Jolie. So you have this incredible
Oh,
impact.
thank
I
you.
mean, you really, really do. But it was interesting because you had us do a practice in our yoga session. And the only way I got him to do it, by the way, ladies, this was something that I heard from another friend, is I turned 40. And for my birthday, I said, all I want for my present is you have to come to 3 private yoga classes with me. And that's it. You have to. You can't go to 1 because you're not going to go back. You can go to 2, but by the 3rd one, and now we're into almost
Like
2
a couple
months,
months. Yeah.
and he's hooked and he loves it.
He's having great improvement.
I couldn't believe
Like
after the
every time.
first class, I do a 1 to 10 always. I'm a big proponent of this with your kids, with your friends, with your spouse. Where do you feel like we're at 1 to 10 in a relationship? I'll ask my kids, how was your day 1 to a 10? You know, I asked Britt, what was your experience 1 to 10? He gave it an 8 the
That's
first
great. I was
class.
surprised.
I
I would
was
have been happy if
shocked.
he'd said 6.
I know.
I mean, I would have been okay with.
I was expecting like a 4.5.
Yeah.
Like I to a 4.5. The next one was going to be a 6, and then maybe we were at an 8 by the
Hopefully,
3rd
yeah.
one. So, but you did a practice with us, and we were shaking.
Mhm.
And you talked about how that was this big release.
Yeah.
And when I orgasm
Mhm.
very intensely,
Yep.
my legs crazy
Me
shake,
too. I
like
shake
quiver.
all over. Yep.
And I never knew what was happening. Like I have to
It's trauma
physically,
release.
I mean, to think that something so pleasurable is also considered
Orgasms are
trauma.
healing. But it's actually, yeah, in a way it can be trauma, but it's also releasing trauma really powerfully.
You really have also allowed me. I've always been super sexual,
Mhm.
and you obviously as well, something
Mhm.
that you and I have talked very freely about. But even those breathing movements and motions in class where
Mhm.
it wasn't easy for me at first to let my breath go in front of a room of people. And now I'm the first person to do it because you always say you give somebody else permission.
Yes. Yes.
So I love that because
Uh-huh.
now that I'm comfortable and I'm in my freedom, I know there might be somebody in class who's going to breathe because I just breathed, like really
100%.
breathed.
Yep.
So I think that goes back to being in the bedroom as well. It's
Sure.
an invitation. So when you're with your partner and maybe you haven't hit that orgasm or you want to get there, when you allow yourself to communicate that or express that even through a sound, you're giving your partner permission to then
Yes.
express their needs as well. So I love this whole idea of invitation and permission.
Yeah.
I think that's such a beautiful way to look at it in any relationship.
Yeah. And
So
breath with sex is tantric. That gets us into the tantric sex department, which is so amazing. I mean, talk about connection,
yeah.
beauty, fullness. You experience everything. The pleasure is increased through the breath. I mean, that's what you've been talking about.
Mhm.
We often use the alcohol or the THC to help us release our inhibitions. We're all just, not all of us, but so many of us have a lot of repressed energy, and we've been taught it's not, sacred, or it's not ladylike to express these things, but truly it is. And that's where we receive the fullness and the ecstasy of these experiences, truly also through the breath.
Maybe the invitation is to, at home alone, find a time where you have a little bit of space by yourself to really allow yourself to breathe fully, to round your belly, to let it go all the way
Mhm.
out, to release it in a way that sounds primal and just feels so unbelievably good. And then slowly placing it into other scenarios in your life, because I think a lot of us don't give ourselves permission to even know what we really like
Right.
and take that time and explore it to then go, okay, I want to incorporate this, or I didn't really love that,
Mhm.
whether it's sexually or just really getting into our body and
Yeah.
into our feminine.
Yes.
So obviously, we have a masculine side and we have a feminine
Mhm.
side. You talk about this too, where the left side, I believe, is your
It's
feminine.
feminine. Yep.
Okay. And the right side is your masculine.
Yes.
So in your mind, what's the proper balance between that as women? I mean, obviously we lean into both, but where do you find the balance should really lie there?
Well, that's a great question. And I think that it's different for every person. I mean, I think we all know those just powerhouse driven women. I mean, you are one of those. And then there's also people who just want to go into the woods and, like live off the grid. So I don't know that there's like a proper balance, but I think that that's something to ask within ourselves. I mean, I was raising four boys and their father is wonderful. But when I had the boys by myself, I started to recognize like, wow, I'm really in my masculine. Like
Yeah.
I'm having to like build a business and I'm doing all these boy things. And I
Mhm.
had to consciously choose. I mean, it doesn't matter what anybody looks like, but I kind of found myself to be what I considered a frumpy soccer mom who wasn't wearing makeup. And I think I was kind of doing this thing of what I thought a spiritual yogi would be. And I'd be like, well, they're not gonna wear beautiful clothes and makeup and jewelry. And then one day I was just kind of like, wait, it is spiritual to
Mm.
wear art on your body to feel like a goddess is embodied. And so I had to actually choose. And I think I started buying like bigger earrings. And, I had to really kind of call
Even in
that
class, she has
in.
the most gorgeous, like, chandelier dangle
Yeah.
earrings always. I
Yeah.
don't know how you do it in class, but I'm always in awe of you.
Yeah.
That was one of the best things that you told me too about this business, about my
Hmm.
boutique, because a lot of
Yes.
times from the outside looking in, people might think like, "Oh, that's just a vanity business or whatever,
Superficial.
superficial, that it doesn't have a lot of meaning." And I would love if you shared,
Yeah.
what you said to me about that, because it really resonated. You have such a beautiful perspective on things like that.
Yeah, I just think that what we wear is and can be art. It's all about the intention, right?
Mm.
It's just what are you embodying in your mind and your heart and your thoughts. But wearing beautiful clothing, I mean, I feel the jaguar energy, even though it's not exactly a jaguar print. I have this animal print on today. And so as I walk around and drive around, I mean, I feel that. And that's what you're providing here, because anybody who's come to your store knows that it's like so beautiful. I'm looking around here now. It's so unique. And when you put on something in this space, you feel drastically different from like the next thing that you try on because your stuff is
I call
just
it
so
dopamine
incredible. Oh,
dressing.
I love that. I've
Yeah.
not heard that. I
And the
love that.
dressing
Yeah,
rooms say dress happy because it changes your entire outlook. And you talked
for
about
sure.
COVID earlier. I
Hmm.
think a lot of people, especially women, everyone was doing Zoom and working from home,
Yeah.
and everyone just kind of got used to being really comfortable and not dressing
Mhm.
up anymore. And that carried over once the real world came back into
Very much
play.
so.
It's an expression. What you
Yeah.
wear is an expression. And
I call it art. Yeah.
life is too short to wear boring clothes. People say to me all the time, but I
Mhm.
have nowhere to wear that. I say, wear it in the produce aisle while you're at the grocery store. And I mean it,
Yeah.
because you're not wearing it for somebody else.
Oh,
You're wearing
so
it for
true. Thank you
you.
for bringing that up.
It is
Yeah.
the number one reminder that I tell women all the time: dress for yourself,
Hmm.
choose yourself, show up for yourself, breathe for
Yeah.
yourself. find that orgasm for yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, we really, as women, have been conditioned our entire lives to think that we are doing everything for everybody else and putting
Yes.
ourselves last.
Yeah, and we've been taught that we're selfish
Yes.
for doing things for ourselves, but I always encourage people to flip that word into self-full. Like we all know the women that are pouring from an empty pitcher. So when you do these things for yourself, when you feel beautiful, when you breathe, when you discover pleasure exactly how you want it and what you want it to be by yourself before then maybe bringing that conversation up with your significant other, then that is where the magic happens. And then we are full. Then we are pouring from an overflowing pitcher rather than constantly sacrificing and like trying to give from emptiness, right? So I say self full. We are being self full when we do these things for ourselves.
Yeah. I talked about that in one of the things I posted a few weeks ago about if it's not a fuck yes, it's a hell no. And I
Yes,
used to
I love
feel
that.
like that was being selfish. And I
Mhm.
can't take credit for that, by the way, but I heard it. My friend Crystal heard it from an astrologer, actually.
Mhm.
She told it to me, and I've just been living by it. And I used to think it was selfish. And now I'm like, this is my life. This
Yeah.
is your life. This is your
Yeah.
life. It's nobody else's life. So
Every
why
moment
are
that
we?
passes, you don't get back.
You don't get it
Yeah.
back. So there's one thing, and I like to be conscious of time, and
Yeah.
Jolie's going to be back because we're baby stepping into a lot of conversations here with you because, as I mentioned, this whole journey for me of wellness and bettering myself is something I'm going to work on until the day that I die. I certainly do not have it figured out. I'm not on here every week trying to pretend that I do, but I continue to show up for myself, choose myself one day at a time, one choice at a time, now one breath at a time,
Yeah. Oh, I
one
love that.
conscious breath
Yes,
at
even
a time.
better.
But there's something that you say a lot in yoga, and I want you to leave the listeners with this today. And it's something about your thoughts become your actions. And
Yeah.
it's one of my favorite things.
Okay. So take a long, slow, deep breath. Inhale. And let it out. And as long as you're not driving, maybe close your eyes. Watch your thoughts, for they become your words. Watch your words, for they become your actions. Watch your actions, for they become your habits. Watch your habits, because they become your character. Watch your character, for that becomes your destiny.
God, I love that. Every time gives me chills.
I have chills all over, like I'm like chicken skin over here.
That's the other thing. And I could keep going, but you've also just made me realize that when you get these chill bumps, I
That's
realize that
spirit.
it means something. So
That's connection.
it all means something. And listening to our body in every moment, in every way, in every choice, in every breath. Keep choosing yourself. Keep showing up. Keep breathing. And Jolie, also before you leave, tell everybody where, of course, Evolve here is in Key West. So if you're not in Key West, she does also offer retreats, but give them your Instagram, your website.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
evolvekeywest.com and also fullcircleyogaschool.com. I do sessions with people online as well as in person. There's a lot of options, whether you're interested in just transformation, trauma release, self-development, or you want to go down the spiritual rabbit holes. I do quantum hypnosis and psychic channeling as well. And I have lots of free things too. I've got a chakra balancing journey and all kinds of things that you can just jump on and start today if you're interested.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much.
And if nothing else, I hope that you really do just breathe because it is amazing. And I have not been saying this. I can't believe it. It's episode 6. If you're liking this, please like and subscribe on YouTube. Hit that little bell so you get a notification and you don't miss an episode. And if you are an audio gal or guy and you're listening on Spotify, Apple, any of the podcast apps, you can follow and rate if you're listening and share because this is how we grow. If this is, meaningful to you, maybe it'll be meaningful to somebody else. And I know it is so unbelievably meaningful to me to have people showing up along for the ride, this crazy ride that I continue to share. And thank you, Jolie.
Thank you.
She will be back. And thank you all. You're listening to Behind the Blonde.